We got the heat is on, man.
The heat is on. The heat is back. It's April 29th, 2021. Welcome aboard. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We're episode 472.
Shit, I forgot my notebook. I think that's wrong. It's 473, I think.
472, 473. I'll let you get up and get the notebook while I do the intro. We appreciate you tuning in, and as we said, we're either podcast 472 or 473, whatever.
We're not experts.
Whatever it is, exactly. We're not experts. We're not professionals at math or just kind of generally keeping count of things, but we are experts at being consistent. That's what we do. We come to you twice a week. We always have.
Speak for yourself.
We always will. Speak for yourself. Traditionally on Mondays and Thursdays, but always twice a week. We've done it for the last 5 years, so we appreciate you tuning in and giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, so we know that your time is valuable, so appreciate you tuning in. It's your first time joining us. We cover it all. We cover all triathlon, we cover life, we cover everything in between, how they can complement each other, how oftentimes they can take away from each other. Mike and I both share our experiences. Sometimes we'll do, we're both currently athletes. We're also both coaches. We're best friends. So we are, like we said before, referring to our math and counting skills and I guess general organizational skills. We are not professionals. We're not experts. We're just experienced. Been doing this for a very long time, both as coaches and athletes. We've seen a lot, been around a lot. We made pretty much all the mistakes, and that's kind of the reason for the podcast is hopefully you can not make the same ones that we did. So we share a lot of our experiences. Oftentimes we'll share our athletes' experiences with what they are going through. Sometimes we'll hop into our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group on Facebook. You can answer one simple question. We'll let you in there. A lot of awesome people in there, a lot of great topics that are being discussed, especially now that racing is back full on. So hop in there. Great community, awesome people. But for the most part, we just kind of sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we feel is necessary and hopefully you can take something from it and apply it to your life. It doesn't have to be exactly what we say, but just kind of to spark your thought process. We kind of take the Seinfeld approach. It's a podcast about nothing. It's kind of the horoscope deal. We kind of generally speaking, and then you can kind of take something and pluck it and apply it to your life and make it relative. No sponsors, no ads, one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
And you're right.
You got your notepad back. Was that correct?
473.
Yeah, like I said, I was a little bit off.
What you said there about we've made a lot of mistakes, that always resonates with me because a lot of times when I'm talking to athletes, I'll reiterate something that I've probably said a million times, but sort of that Latin thing about the teacher being the student is really where it comes down to. Is I think a lot of times we go through these things and it's not like advice as much as it is reminding ourselves of how to handle the course or how to handle training and racing and stuff like that, because it just takes a while, I think, for a lot of this stuff to sink in, and I find myself, I've been in this sport almost 10 years or whatever, and I found myself in the pool yesterday just making rookie mistakes.
We all make rookie. Everyone still
I know, but
makes,
it's just like
even
amazing.
Professionals still make. We watched it in Challenge Miami, I think, or Challenge Daytona, whichever one it was. Like professional athletes coming out of transition and making total beginner mistakes. Like we all make them, and I think that's what makes really really good coaches are ones that are just experienced and still figuring things out. And that's, I think,
I can't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, it's
just repetition is how you learn.
But doesn't mean you're
immune
to making to making mistakes. Like, and that's why I love working with such a wide range of athletes with different abilities. Like, you and I both work with a very wide range of athletes with different abilities and different skill sets. There have been, for me, example, like I've got in my youngest athlete is 19, my oldest one is 72. I work with basically like half and half. 50% of the people I work with are males, 50% of the work with are females. And you work with people who've been in the sport for, I've got some that have been in the sport for 6 months, some that have been in the sport for 20 years, and then you got people who are, trying to get their feet wet and learn as much as you can about sprints and Olympics. And you got people who are trying to, get on the podium and go back to Kona. Like, that's like everyone in between. That's the thing, is like, you can learn so much from so many people, and but it's all applicable, right? Like the people who are at the pointy end of the spectrum aren't immune to making rookie mistakes, right? And it's also the same goes for people that are rookies. They're also not, incapable of having a perfect race, right? Like, so we're all, because the thing is we're all human. We all let our ego get in the way. We all make mistakes. We all, fail to stay present. We fail to not prepare, whether it's because we're new or whether it's because we've been doing it so long that we don't think we need to prepare because we can kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah,
like, we all make mistakes. Like, and that's the thing is like, no one's perfect. No one's training is perfect. Sometimes we can kind of fall into having like the best race, but we're all human, like we're all people. And like, I think I was listening to a podcast yesterday with one of the more, probably one of the top like 2 or 3 best triathlon coaches on the planet. He's the head coach of the Norwegian national team. He probably coaches like two of the top like 5 or 6 triathletes on the planet. And he was saying like, there are very, very few like very special talent people, like people like oh they're overly talented or they're overly athletic, and I'll never have that. There are very, very, very few people like that on this planet, for comparing to the amount of people who do things that are special, who do things that are we consider extraordinary. But it really just comes down to, and he even said the same thing, is like comes down to the same thing. It comes from just being consistent and doing it for a long period of time, and then not setting limits for yourself, because he says setting limits for yourself allows for more excuses. He just says, don't put limits on your ability, just go. And, I think that, and that's why, that's why it's great. I think every coach should work with, you and I both get these emails, oftentimes from athletes. They're like, I don't know if you work with, athletes of my ability. I'm like, we work with everyone because you're all human. Like, that, like, I think if you only work with one type of athlete, then you're kind of, it's like trying to major in a certain thing. Like, you don't just take one class. You take a very broad spectrum of courses to make you an overall well-rounded, academic in whatever your field is. The same thing goes for coaching. Like, it's great to learn and work with a wide range. Like, we just had this discussion before we went live, is like, sometimes we forget, right? Like how much information there is to know in this sport, or that, we just kind of assume that everyone else knows because there's just so much going on, or you've been doing it for so long, you still make mistakes because, again, we're triathletes. Hopefully you're a triathlete second, right? Like, it's not your number one thing in life. Your number one thing is to be like, the best person you can be, or the best spouse, or the best parent, or the best co-worker, or the best friend, whatever it is. Like, triathlon should come like, second, third, fourth, way down the line. But so, we have life, we're human. So everyone makes mistakes, and the best thing we can do is share those mistakes, and then how we can learn from them, and then just kind of bring them to the surface. Cause most people like to live in that, world of, like social media is you only post like the greatest of the greatest of the great. And, most of life is kind of like, it's in the minutia. It's like, in the gray and the 80%. And that's kind of what gets lost in the mix.
Mm. Yeah. It's so easy to forget that stuff, man. I mean, we just kind of like, the thing about us is, though, the one good thing I think is that we work with a wide range of athletes, but we're really kind of hyper focused on triathlon. So we're always talking about that stuff, and obviously every week on the podcast we do and everything like that, but we're kind of walking around and we're just kind of throwing things out at each other and asking things, and we're constantly reminding ourselves to, it's so easy in this, because in the world, like you say, with social media and in the hacks and the whole 9 yards, it's so easy to kind of get off your tracks. And I think it's just human nature to try and find an easier route to back to, like in my case, I feel like now it's sort of trying to get back to where I was. And one of the things I was doing yesterday was I was trying to be who I was, when I was in good shape, and I'm just not there yet. And I'm not saying I'm not going to get there. I'm not bitching about it. I'm not whining, but I think that I have to realize that things take time, and it's in there. I have no doubt about that, but we have to remember who we are and where we are in the process. And I think that's important when we're training, no matter where we're at, it's sort of like if you're even at the pointy end and you're crushing it and all this kind of stuff, you have to remember that you can't go too far over, there's always that tipping point in training. I feel like no matter if you're not in good shape or if you're in good shape, and those are the kind of things that are easy to forget in the moment, because you're like, hey, kind kind of getting a little indicator here. I might have it back.
You show, you
Next
show a
thing you
glimmer,
know.
and you're like, oh, better put the shades on, baby. And you're like, now I can't see because it's still dark. Like that's kind of
how easy is that, man? I mean, how many times you had a workout and went, yeah, I'm back.
Still got it, baby.
And then the next
Let
day
me
you're
repeat
just
it, and you're like,
crying
don't
because
got
it's
it.
like, you can't get out of bed and whatever.
It's so true. Like, and it goes from like, like you've been, laid up with an injury, on and off here for a little while. And you've got a ton of athletes who are like just now getting in the pool again after a long layoff. And they're like, I'm still not back. Like I still don't have it. And it's like, or they're coming back from injury, or they're coming back from just, generally not, and that's like one of the, like, I try to get athletes that are coming back from injuries or illness or just general, like, time away, from the sport, which is a good thing, for a lot of people, is that to stop making those freaking comments. Like, I'm not where I used to be, or I'm not. I'm like, yeah, but I guarantee you're faster than you were 2 years ago, and I think that all gets lost, right? And especially if you've been in the sport for a long period of time, like I've been, in double-digit years, you're getting close to double-digit years in the sport. Like when I look back on like some of the most fun I've ever had in training, speed and power or distance or endurance, like all those things came like third, fourth down the list of why I enjoyed that period of time so much. It came from, because if we all look back, like we were always slower at some point, right? Like we were always like, I feel like the longer you're in the sport, you tend to forget why things were so fun in the beginning. They were so fun because you were getting better, right? You had no idea what you were capable of. You had no idea how much faster you were going to get, how much fitter you were going to get, how far you'd be able to run and ride. Like that's why it was so fun, because you were kind of exploring like the limits that you thought you had for your body, for your mind. You were putting in, being better with time management. You were doing things like all these things that you were kind of becoming a new person. Like that's fun, and then we do it all again, but all we do is obsess about what we aren't, right? And what we don't have anymore, versus like, and this, people do it all the time. Like they come back and like, oh, why wasn't this in, why am I not still this speed? Or I'm really frustrated because I have so far to go. But like, well, I'm not saying that should be fun, right? But I'm saying that like you can look at it as like the journey back. It's the same. All of it's the same process. All of it. In getting back or getting better, like you should always be trying to move forward. And if you're doing something one day, you're further along than you were the day before. And that's really all that you should be concerned about, is that you're now one day closer to being, the best version of yourself that might very well exceed the expectations that you had being that quote unquote past version of yourself that you continually compare yourself to. Like you don't think that you've had your best race ever. I don't think I've had my best race yet. Like I still think I have a sub 430, 70.3 in me, and so, I think while it's going to take a lot of effort, like whether I do or whether I don't, like the part is like, I just want to find out. And that what comes with that is just doing the work and trying to inch my way closer to getting there. And I'm saying that as a guy whose first 70.3 ever was a 608 or a 613, like Gulf Coast, like the very first one I ever did. I made, good God, so many mistakes in that race. It was unreal. My training was definitely not ideal. This is like 2006 or 7. So like a good chunk of change ago. And so like, even if I take time off and I try not to get frustrated with where I used to be, because it's still not even close to where I was when I first picked out, my first bike or my pair of shoes. And like, oh God, like I'll never be in as bad a swim shape as I was the very first day I got back in the water in 2002 or 3. When I was like 65 pounds overweight, I could barely make it down and back in the pool. This is coming from a guy that like, swam year round growing up. Like I was, swimming swim trunks. I remember where I was, Concord Row Y. Like, but then you remember like the fun part of it is just getting better and being part of a process that is at least heading in the right direction, because we truly don't. Like we never know, and we and I are both, are big on not having our athletes set expectations, right? Because I do believe it just sets up, it gives you excuses like to not reach it, when not giving yourself a limit, I think is the fun part, because we don't. Like I think the human body is one of them is so underrated in the things that it's capable of, and people have this vision of who they are and who they can be, or comparing it to who they were, and once you kind of let go of that, like everything opens up. You race free, you train free. Nothing becomes a comparison. It becomes just part of it, and like, we both work again, like with athletes that like, are getting older and getting faster. And they're like, we had an athlete that I've worked with for just now 2 years now. She's been doing running races in the sport for a long time. And she ended up PRing her half marathon this week. She was like, who knew, I could PR and beat that time at 52. And I was like, I mean, I don't want to say that I did, but I feel like we could. But the thing is like, you don't know. And so as soon as you adopt that feeling of I can't ever, or I'm never going to get back, then you, in my opinion, are just kind of putting on those clothes and just kind of assuming and accepting that you're never going to get back there again. But the fun part to me is seeing where you can get to if you just think, you know what, I'm going to be, like you said, be where you are. Don't be where you thought you might be. And people do that, like going into races. Like we usually hop on this podcast and have absolutely zero topics for today. And today we had like 9, but you were talking about like, knowing ranges for your 70.3, whether you've done the training or not done the training, right? You kind of have to know, because a lot of people go into these races, like, there's a lot of 70.3s coming up. You got St. George this weekend. You got Bustleton 70.3, Gulf Coast, Chattanooga, Armatosa. Like, people tend to not shift their expectation of finish time from the moment they signed up to the duration of their training to race day, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
It's like you sign up for race and you're like, I think I can go sub 5:30 here. And then you kind of half-ass your way through training. You don't even do it nearly as well as you thought you did. But what do? You toe the line the day before and you're like, I think I got a sub 5:30 in me, right? Which leads you to making gigantic mistakes on race day. But it's about understanding who you are and the training that you've done. And we were kind of discussing briefly, and we can get into this if you want, is like, it's like knowing your ranges and knowing the ranges that you've built. And we'll talk about the bike, but to me, it always goes back to using the example of swimming, is most people don't have more than 1 or 2 speeds in the pool. They have slow and they have I can't breathe. That's it. They don't swim enough, right? Or train enough to have, what you and I both like to call like, swimming on a rivet. Like, it's that controlled, steady pace. It's not comfortable. It's not easy, but it's not hard, right? It's that kind of race pace. But in order to have that pace, you have to have trained enough to have that other gear. Like, you're not just, yes, we're all born with, I think 4 or 5 different gears in every single sport we've ever going to do. But in order to kind of unlock that gear to be able to use it effectively, you have to earn it. You have to do enough training to, like unlock level 2, like in your training, and that requires swimming 3 days a week and doing hard swims. Same goes for the bike. Like, you can go into a race wanting to race it, and if you've done the work that will allow you to race it by pushing a different range, which is, in my opinion, is like a zone 3 to racing, but you have to have done the work to be able to hold that intensity for a certain number of time. If not, then you're probably better off doing zone 2, for the duration of the ride and not pushing it and not burning yourself out, saving it further and kind of looking at it as like, how long can I delay fatigue, right? Versus, and that's if you haven't done maybe the best training that you thought you could do, versus if you think you really nailed training, then it becomes more of a race because you can feel like you can push the intensity on a little bit higher of a note, but you're going to be doing it for a less period of time. Mm.
Yeah, in the water, man, that's one of those things that's difficult, those ranges and things like that. And I was kind of thinking about that, like I have been going through, sort of a struggle period for a while in training. I'm in and out. And I, like you said, I don't want to go back there and automatically assume that I am going to be this person or that person. I think the beauty of it is, and I've been actually trying to visualize this whole process as kind of a rebirth, because that idea of getting into triathlon and kind of like everything's sort of new and you're figuring it out and you're always PRing and doing new things every day and what have you. Well, if I can look at this process as a rebirth in the sport, where, we've done almost 500 podcasts and we've talked about all this stuff. So it's sort of like I'm coming almost back from scratch in a lot of ways, but with a lot of new information. So as I was swimming yesterday, I was kind of trying to think, okay, really hone in on what this feels like and how, how you can set your zone in the water. Or like, I was really actually going, now just go as easy as you can, because your shoulder's been sore and there's no sense of like being stupid and crushing something just because it feels okay for a lap or two. And I was really trying to slow down as much as possible and make it as easy as possible, but still kind of instinctually, I guess, let the stuff that we've been teaching people and you can't deny the fact that if you sit there and teach people and talk about swimming and watch swimming all the time, that you're going to learn some stuff. So rather than overthink it, I was just trying to find this really nice pocket of just relaxed kind of. I wasn't trying to think about my elbow and all the stuff. I just sort of felt like intuitively I know that kind of thing, and I was just trying to make swimming as easy as possible. And while I was not going fast, I wasn't really going that slow. And I'm like, okay, you're not strong at all right now. And if you can keep this sort of mentality going, and I think that just translates into, it doesn't matter where you are in the process, if you kind of like let yourself, kind of be fresh in the thing and not put like an end limiter on yourself. Like you're saying, don't put limits on, just kind of like accept it. And I'm always talking about, I've always been into that flow state of thought and just letting things go. And a lot of times I think that's where athletes get in trouble is we talk about zones and say zone 2 is, and your bike is 25 watts or something range, or is that too much? You think, or 20?
Depends
Whatever.
on what range. Yeah.
So, but like, man, that's a lot of play space in there. And I mean, frankly, I almost believe that just because you're pushing more watts doesn't necessarily mean you're going faster. Like, I think you can have like a flow to your cycling and your run stride and things like that can actually, if you're released and your muscles are more limber and flux or fluid, that, it doesn't always come down to just a number. And especially over time, if you can kind of find that sweet spot that you can go longer and longer and longer at it and kind of finish strong or whatever within that zone, and maybe pop into it. You pop into zone 3 or whatever, but then maybe you can creep into the middle of zone 3 and it doesn't bug you or whatever. If you're feeling that flow, I kind of went off there.
There's like a million things there's a lot of things you said right there that I like.
Oh, really?
that's like dry statement. And I'll go in reverse because I'll forget this last one. But the thing you said about the bike is so true, and like you see that with athletes so much that they're obsessed with what they can hold for 20 minutes. That's it. But they do like 0 long rides. Like, but my FTP is like 300, right? But they don't do any long rides to make it worth like. So when it comes to like, hey, well, yeah, but your goal is an Ironman, but all you're doing is like 20 by 20 minute efforts on Trainer Road. When was the last time you did a bunch of long rides so you can hold it for a long period of time? But my FDP is like, yeah, well, you're probably going to ride 55% of it, right? At Ironman at best, and then still probably be shelled because it's 20 minutes versus the person whose FTP is probably 280, but they've done a lot of long riding. They could probably ride like 0.75, which is going to end up being higher than the guy who does a 300. I love what you said about the getting back in the water, and I think. And this goes, in my opinion, for no matter where you are in your journey. I think it's like one of those things where when you've been in the sport for a long time, like you've been in the sport for a while, and getting back in the pool. And I think this is the tendency and the impulsiveness that triathletes have, that because they're always looking for shortcuts, is like you've built and cultivated and created via experience, via through our athletes. Like you have a giant toolbox. You know what to do. Like you've seen every scenario. Like, a lot of times we'll get emails like, I don't know if you've seen this before. And like, we've seen it. Like, we've been doing this for a very long time. We've worked with a wide variety of athletes. And sometimes we'll get a scenario, that I'm like, yeah, I have totally seen this because we've been doing this for a very long time, and you can apply it. And like, we know what's going to happen or know how to make suggestions. But the thing is, like, you have a toolbox that you know how to build a great, foundation of fitness with. Okay. The tricky part is that you have to understand now that you only have based on where your fitness is now, you only have the ability to use those tools for a certain amount of time each day because your fitness isn't where it used to be. You can't go out and work out and use that toolbox for 12 to 14 hours a week to build this great foundation, this great chassis, this great aerobic base for your big race. Right now, you're probably only capable of lifting up the tools and using those, the ones that knows work for 2-3 hours a week. The tendency for athletes, though, is to look at their toolbox and think, God, I don't know that I want to do this. I need to go buy a new tool. I need to do something totally, forget the toolbox, forget what I know, forget the tools that I've had and used for, a million different projects, a million different races of the course of the last, 5 or 10 years. What I need is to go buy a new tool, because that new tool is basically going to help me cut time in half of what's going to take me to get back. So what I need to do is these, and that's why things that are, that's why hacks and, 8 weeks to this and 10 weeks to this and, 4 weeks is, that's why they sell a lot, because people are so inconsistent with using them. They don't get results. They just move on to the next one and buy it. Like, you just have, it works. Like, being consistent and working hard and being smart, it works. And it's not fancy and it's not flashy. It might seem boring, but the results are extraordinary. But when it comes down to being patient, you have to kind of think, all right, I'm going to get my toolbox out of the truck this week. I'm going to use the tools that I know that work, but I can only use them for 3 or 4 hours this week. So I'm going to use those. And the next week, I built up a little bit of endurance. Like, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm still feeling pretty healthy. Maybe I can squeeze 4 to 5 hours out of it. And then weeks and months go by and you're like, oh, all of a sudden I can pick up my toolbox and like, now I can do like 10 or 12 hours this week, and now I'm like feeling back and I'm healthy. But again, like, going back is like, the tendency is to always want to pick up or maybe pick up a tool you're not ready to use yet. Like, I don't think I'm going to pick up the jackhammer. Like, that's the tool that you use when you're like, when you've been using 10, 12 hours a week. But now I think I'm going to jump the gun, because, I used to use the jackhammer.
Yeah.
It used to be my thing, like the guys that come in and they're like, yeah, well, what's your strength? Definitely running. Oh, well, really, why is running your strength? Dude, back my junior year of high school, I was the anchor on the 4x800 relay. And you're like, when was the last time you ran? It's been a year and a half ago. Okay, that's irrelevant. It's like, it doesn't matter. So, but it's hard to accept that we aren't where we thought we were. However, it doesn't totally erase where we've been. Right? And that's
100%.
And I think that's something that we forget, because we're capable of getting right to that point again, if not further. Like, I imagine it'd be very much the same conversation. Like, if I ever called you up and I was like, Mike, I took a drink of alcohol. I relapsed. I can't believe I have to start over again. I can't believe I had 7.5 years and now I'm at day one. Like, I can't fathom having to do that stretch again and doing, and like, it's going to take me forever to get back to 7 years, and it's going to take me forever. You'd be like, but dude, but do the same thing you did the previous time. Just worry about doing the right things today. And then after it does, it'll add up to 7. Like, it doesn't, but also taking a drink of alcohol wouldn't erase being sober for 7.5 years, and the things that I've learned, the things that I was equipped to do, the things that I learned from it. You wouldn't be like, those aren't gone. You just have to start doing back and doing the same things you did before, and maybe address some things that made you drink in the first place. But outside of that, you wouldn't say, Robbie, well, start over. Good luck.
Yeah.
Maybe you ought, or what you wouldn't say is, well, what you should do is you should probably go to this, special, AA, elixir meeting where you can do
osmosis,
this.
Osmosis. Reverse that out of your system.
And then you'll be good to go. And then, matter of fact, like, you can probably just drink casually, and like be like, no, you'd be like, do what got you there, and let's just try to refine some things.
I think that's a real good analogy for what a lot of people go through on a lesser, I guess, of intensity scale, whether they're eating or they're, I ate cookies yesterday. I'm back to square one. No, it's going to bother you for a few days probably, or a day or two, like I notice that a lot. Like, some days I'll go through like these, like salad, I'm going in with the veggies. I'm going to go hard, and I'm like 2.5 days into that, and I'm feeling really good. And it's like, man, that cookie craving or that carb thing or whatever. And then I just kind of fall off the rail for a little bit. And I go, damn it. But it just it does stick with you. That's the thing, is like, it gets in your head a little bit. Like, in your case, that would certainly be in your head. But I also think it kind of, just having a lot of sugar and things like that mess with your mood. And then you're like, damn it, I was going so good. Now I got to start over. No, you had actually a few days there that were good. Just kind of pick up, and maybe you're a little bit, maybe you fell down a little notch, but just go back, because you didn't. It's like the stock market. It didn't crash, it just kind of dipped, and then you just kind of pick it back up or whatever. But
you hit a lot of things that I think are kind of maybe different direction, but I think incredibly important for athletes to understand is that, going back to your thing about, and this goes for this, and I think it's an important conversation to have, especially when athletes start to put more pressure and expectation on themselves to do things now that racing is here, and like, you have these things, is that, a lot of athletes say, like, I just felt guilty right, for missing it. And I felt guilty for doing this. And that would be a whole lot of what I would feel if I ever picked up a drink again, is be like, I would feel an enormous amount of guilt and shame and embarrassment, which in turn, as you know, being familiar with the program, is like, that's more likely to do is have me drink again, right? Because I'm so guilty and I'm so ashamed and I'm so embarrassed that like those things are what make you, or part of a reason that might make you want to drink. The same thing goes for people, who struggle with, kind of up and down and kind of crash dieting, is that like they'll stay strong to them, quote unquote, stay strong for 4 or 5 days. And then they just absolutely crash and burn and have like, a whole sleeve of cookies and order a pizza. And then the shame and disappointment and the kind of the self-criticism and negative self-talk is so severe, it puts them in a place of what are they more inclined to do? Eat more cookies, have more pizza, because that's their comfort. Like, I'm going to reach for that. They're not going to be like, you know what? I feel so ashamed. I'm going to go eat a salad and like, can I get back? No, same thing goes with working out. And I had this conversation with an athlete earlier this week where I'm very much like be happy and let's stay healthy. But sometimes I'll say, get your ass back in the pool. Because this athlete said, I'm, as you've seen, I've kind of been, not wanting to go to the pool just because, it's my ego. I don't want to see slower times. And, I'm kind of avoiding it for that reason. And I just simply said, get your ass back in the pool, because all you're doing is delaying your progress. And the longer you delay it, the more you're going to convince yourself not to get back in the pool, right? It's the same thing because you're going to be even worse, right? So if I don't want to see 2 minutes, I'm just not going. It's my ego. Well, yeah, you take another month off, and what are you going to see? 2 10s. You think 2 10s are going to encourage you to go back to the pool? No. Same thing goes for running. Same thing getting on your bike. Like, I just don't want to see the 180. Then go to a different sport. Like, if you don't want to see it, then don't do it. But the same thing goes for working out. Like, you have athletes that miss a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they're like, this whole week shot, I've just seen red. Like, and I feel so guilty. I feel like I can't get my motivation. Is that something that's going to spur them to get back in shape and go back and do workouts? No, it's going to make them want to sit more and do less. Like, and it's an interesting psychological pressure, I think, that we have and triathletes have, is that it has to be perfect to be worthy, right? Or it has to be the way that we want it to be, to make us, have a good part of, the progress we're trying to make. That's not always the case. It's about like not being so hard on yourselves and understanding and realizing that, hey, we all have bad days. We all have bad races. We all have to come back, at some point. Like, I know very, very, very few athletes that have just had like a general positive trend in the right direction for, because we have a lot of athletes, like that I've been working for 4, 6, 7, 8 years. Very rarely has there been one that hasn't gone through a big sickness or some kind of an injury or a burnout phase or, this thing called life, where they have like, a job change. Like, so you go through it, but the important piece of it is like, it's how quickly you're able to pick it back up. And the longer you delay accepting, like you said, just who you are right now and where you are. And the truth is that, most of us are where we are and who we are for a reason, right? And accepting that, and not beating ourselves up because, well, yeah, I really should have done the last 2 or 3 months. Well, we didn't. So the sooner we can accept where we are now, the quicker we can get to not just back to who we were, because we'll be totally different. The sooner we can get to who we want to be in the future. But the longer you just sit and sulk and lament on who you aren't, then the longer it's going to take you to be who you want to be.
Mm. I've always been a guy who kind of goes through those cycles, and that salad to cookie and pizza thing, I just went through that this week. And yesterday, my trip to the pool was what I normally try to do is, like you're saying, it's so easy to kind of go, I'm not feeling it, and you can say that so long. And sometimes you have to force yourself to go do something. And I went there with zero expectations. And again, it was sort of like, I've tried to have this rebirth principle in my mind where I'm like, okay, I'm just kind of getting in there again. It's like this, think of it like an exciting adventure and something. It's an opportunity to kind of go through this process again. You know what I mean? It's almost reincarnate without having a memory or something. That's what I'm trying to do, because, if you drag your memories along and like to get to the points where you were and you don't get there quick enough, that can be real frustrating. But if you don't think about those, or if you don't remember those, or you try to let those things go and say, hey, I'm creating a new person here. I'm creating a new racer or triathlete or whatever, and I have no expectations or limits or anything like that. I think that's really powerful, because like, I mean, you've even told me in the past, you thought that I've set limits on my running, and I hit it's like I have this weird, you set this weird clock.
You have a marathon pace, so you run it.
Yeah.
And you've run it almost every single event, no matter what.
And I can't remember. 420. Yeah. It's like 6 out of 7 marathons have been exactly 420.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter the course, But yeah, so it's just, for me, man, is like, it's so easy to go through those little cycles, but you have to, it's like I always used to scare myself. I always used to really be excited about playing drums and stuff, but they scared the crap out of me, especially like the thought of being on stage and everything like that. So at some point in my life, I was like, what do? I just learned to play drums. And then one night I was like, I got to go up there. And it was the most traumatizing experience of my life. But I mean, it was really bad. And in fact, one of my musician buddy friends of mine, I walked off the stage and he goes, man, you look like you've been through a trauma. I go, dude.
I was.
And then he started calling my open stage band Mike's Trauma. So
hey, that's pretty good. Actually.
It was
I'm
pretty
sure
good.
People would buy that.
Yeah, I know. So that was very grungy.
It kind of goes back, well, not goes back, but like, again, like another analogy, like I would venture to say that at least a handful, if not a high percentage of the richest people on the planet, right, have also been bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right. Have gone through but what has, and I'm sure it'd be easy to say like, well, how am I ever going to get, my life back? Like I'm down to zero. I've gone to this, like, how am I ever going to work my way back to having what I used to have, right? And so I'm sure many of them don't ever get it back because I think I don't want to work that hard again. Like I did that much to do this and do that, and how am I ever gonna? And the same thing goes like that. That's a lot of the hesitancy people have when I know what I use AA and treatment a lot in this podcast, but I think it's a great analogy for a lot of things in life and in training and how we look at things. Is a lot of people don't go, and my original fear was like, but what am I going to give up? Right? Like, what am I going to lose? It's all about what are we going to lose if we start back, or, like I'm going to have to start over with so many things. I don't want to start over, but for me at that point, it was like, I didn't really have much. So it was kind of a no brainer. But if you look at like the decisions that you make in terms of, I'm never going to have this, then you've accepted that you're never going to have better. Right. And that, cause what you're holding on to is what you have now. You're not accepting that you're going to have better. You're going to have anything greater. You're not going to be better fitness. You're not going to have, a better, life. Like you're just accepting that, well, no, I'm fine with what I've got. Like, I don't want to start over again. Like I want to go back to what I was, back then. You couldn't pay me $1 million to go back and live the way that I lived before I got sober. None of it. You couldn't write me a check and say, hey, go back. No, thank you. Like, I'm good. I don't want to do that again.
Well, you were coaching me though, wasn't
well, listen, that was like one of the very few highlights of my, of that
I've
journey.
had a few start overs.
I have
if
you look at net positives, you're one that's drowned out by all the negatives. But no, it's
you want me to do what today, coach?
It's one of those things, coach, why are your eyes so red? It's like,
you go drink for a while and then swim the channel.
Yeah. Why? It wasn't the smartest thing I ever did. But no, it's like one of those things but you look at it and think, you have to start over, in a lot of ways. And whether it's, again, coming from a burnout or an injury or a sickness or just, being away from sport for a long period of time or life change, it's like the fear of not being who you are is, I think, so debilitating and paralyzing that you're kind of forgetting that you can be like so much better. I'd be totally lying if I'd have said, when I went, because I spent 90 days in treatment, I'm like, I don't really want to, like, I left, I had to get picked up. I had no car. I had to borrow like $2,500 from my parents to buy an old Jetta. I didn't have much because my everything had been like repoed, or I lost, like, I didn't have a place to live. So I had to live in a halfway house. Like I had really just had nothing. I started over, as you know. if you'd have told me then, we would be doing what we are now and like, being able to live this kind of life, I'd be like, you're insane. Like that's never going to happen to me. I just want to get back to living like a normal thing, but you have to do it in a totally different way. And then just kind of, 7.5 years later, like things tend to happen, or even a year or two later, it all tended to happen. But I think we get so wrapped up on, and even if you're not like going through like a severe period of your life, like if you look back over, for me, taking that aside, like the last 40 years of my life, like there were huge ebbs and flows where life was great and life was terrible. Life was great. I think we all have that, but we all remember, but it was so great back then. And like, we all have peaks and valleys. It's just, it's about where you end up, right? It's about where things end up at the end of your life. And like, you're never gonna, I think, people might, remember the bad things, but hopefully they remember all the good things, but it doesn't mean you didn't do, you didn't mess up. It just means that you kept going. Right. And because usually the end of your life is going to be a net positive. That's the same way you should look at training and like, the ebbs and flows. Like, do I think like if I had never given up training the last 3 or 4 years, never taking a break, do I think it would have already gone sub 430? For sure. Right. But would I be as happy as I am right now and have like a pretty good balance with life? Probably not, but also don't know. But I also don't just think, God, if I had just not taken that time off or just not taken like 2 years off of racing, like where would I be right now? It literally never crosses my mind because I'm just happy to be where I am right now because I at least know I'm heading in a direction. Because every time I do a workout, every time I do a session, every time I feel good about what I did, at least I know I'm getting closer. I'm not getting farther away. And I think that's the important kind of piece. It's that, when it comes to visualizing things and kind of wrapping your mind around getting back or trying to move forward, it's like I'm a step closer. I'm not farther away. I'm actually a step closer. There is no in between. Like, there's no. My grandfather used to say, like, you never want to be standing in a doorway because you're not going anywhere. You're not coming from anywhere. You need to be doing something. And that's the same thing with training. You're never just staying put. You're either getting better and getting fitter and heading back, or you're getting farther away. And that just comes down to a choice.
The idea that, you can, I like this idea, like, if you have a bad streak for a couple days or whatever, and it's not like you go all the way back to the beginning. And a couple weeks ago, I haven't really ridden too much. I've ridden a little bit around here in the past and on the Greenway, no, hilly or nothing real tough, just kind of out spinning and stuff like that. And then out of the blue, I went to the Trace and rode like, for 2 hours at 2,400 feet. And I actually felt really good. I mean, like to the point where I'm like, man, I'm not that far behind probably. It could have been a weird day, but when you have those weird days, that always says to me is like, you got this in you. It's and it's just a matter of like, you're talking about unlocking certain keys or unlocking certain locks along the way and all that kind of stuff. And if you think about one of the biggest challenges I think that triathletes have, it's sort of, and you talked about it a few podcasts ago, finding excitement. Like, where do you find your excitement, And as I was talking about this rebirth concept or whatever, just imagine if you're reincarnated in life and you came back and you were like with every memory that Robbie Bruce had from last life. Oof. And it'd be like, I don't know, but in my mind, I'd be like, man, this might be boring, like to know everything already. But what if you came back into life and you were just completely, your memory was erased, but you had certain deja vus in your DNA and things like that. And I think I think about that kind of stuff a lot. But like, how do you create that in triathlon? And I think what you just said is, obviously you've taken some breaks and, focused on coaching and kind of like re-stoked your, excitement about triathlon in some ways. And I mean, I think you just find it in the little things right now, which I think is really probably the key to everything about this sport, because, we get in and it's just so exciting when it's new. Like, you just want to know everything. I remember I was peppering you daily, dude, that the guy that, probably annoyed the shit out of you, but
to put it mildly.
But yeah, I mean, I get it, but I mean, it was sort of like, I remember going through that when I started drumming and everything, but it was kind of like, I needed to know everything. And then you start knowing things. And then at what point when do you become the advice giver? It's like, and then it's like not as exciting or something, but it can be. And I guess I'm just kind of floating around in this water right now to try and see if we can come up with like little tricks for people who have been in the sport for a long time that sort of lose their, excitement levels, or lose their, like it's just sort of like a grinder more than it is like a fun.
Yeah, and the
experience.
thing is like we don't ever know anything. Like humans love to think we're in control. We have like very little to zero, right, of control. Like I think, in terms of like, what we can feel like we have control, but life happens and basically disrupts everything whenever it wants to, and it's about how we react to it. But I also think it's just about perspective, and like this, and I've told you this multiple times, and I'm sure people would think it's asinine or insane, but like, as much as I don't want to go back to those previous, like 33 years of my life, I wouldn't change any of it. Like, I definitely have like massive regrets and like things I wish I wouldn't have done and people I wish I wouldn't have hurt. But if that's what it took to get me to where I am now, then zero. I wouldn't change a thing. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And the same thing kind of goes with like going back to like, yeah, I took a 2-year break, but who's not to say that if I hadn't have, I wouldn't be burnt out now and pretty much not doing anything anyway. Right? Like you just don't know those things. And I think about Hayden's age and think about, when I was racing last time, like he was, 2 or 3 years old, he didn't really know what was going on. But now when I race, he can like really see me race and be into it and like give me a high five and like knows what I'm doing, which is a benefit. Where I could be burnt out and not doing any of it, he could have missed it all and I never want to race again. So I think you have to spin things the way that you need them to be positive and to be like, no matter what, I generally think we're always kind of where we are for a reason. Like even if we don't really know why, and 2 years ago we couldn't have planned it or we wish things had differently, but you don't know. It could be 20 times worse, and like that's, one of the things like you just kind of have to accept, I think, is to make the best choices and to do the best you have with what you have right now to move forward. And that's it. Life is going to happen. Life is, life doesn't dictate yours. It dictates the opportunity you have and how you respond to it, because you could, we all know different people that some people would just seize opportunities and obstacles and are like, I'm going to make this my own. I'm going to turn this into a, we've seen it over the past year and a half. Like some people have, same thing goes for business. Some people have basically, ran and gone in different directions. Some people are like, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to move forward and to get better and to flourish. I'm not going to use it as an excuse, to not do things. And the same thing goes with life. It's like you're dealt cards and you can, I just got a bad hand. Well, we all get hands. It's about how you play them and how you respond. And then you can't, woe is me for the next 5 years because you got dealt one bad hand, because usually that's the same thing. That's the same attitude going back to like the training and the crash dieting and the stuff like that. It's just like, you're just letting, that immediate feeling gain momentum into just your overall feeling of life. You become, depressed and anxious and down and down on yourself, and you lose all belief. But you're not going to gain any belief in yourself sitting on the fucking couch. Excuse my language, but you're not going to gain any belief in yourself. You're not going to gain any more self-confidence. You're not going to start to be hopeful. You're going to start to be optimistic by just sitting on the couch and doing absolutely nothing. Like in order to, a lot of people say movement is medicine, and they are totally true. Like it's totally true. You have to get out and do something and make a step forward. Don't just sit there and think, and because it's become very easy, I think, for people to attach themselves to, I can't do this and I can't do that and I'm just kind of stuck. Well, you're choosing to be stuck. Like you can choose to also be unstuck, or to at least start becoming unstuck and move in a positive direction. But I think especially the last 5 or 10 years, like it's been, you just see more and more with people, with athletes, with friends, with family. It's just like, I don't want to say it's become popular because that's not true, but it's become trendy almost. Like, I can't, I don't want to do it because of this or because of that. And I'm just going to sit here. And I'm telling you, the longer you sit there, the harder it's going to be to come back. It's like, delaying, for me, it was like delaying going to treatment. It was like the longer you delay, the harder it's ever going to be to do it. So stop delaying and, get off your ass and do something.
Yeah. And all I can say is like, I just can't, underestimate how important it is to remember to do that, but be where you are. Because I'm just like, exactly what happened yesterday is like, I got to go to the pool. I got to get in there and do some water jogging, maybe some breaststroke, maybe a little bit of freestyle, kind of move my body, move my shoulder around, blah, blah, blah. And I got there and I forgot my watch. I'm like, damn it. Because I just like to time it sometimes, like how long do I run or whatever.
Stupid chrono.
And then I was like, wait, there's a wall clock. You know, I'm okay.
They have the best wall clocks there.
It's really nice. And
big, digital.
It was like
it's fantastic.
3:27 or 4:27? 3:27. Anyway, whatever time it was. All right, I got in, and if I go to 4, that's a half hour, time, like pool shenanigans is my new training thing right now. And about halfway through, I'm like, I wonder if I could go an hour. I wonder if I could go an hour. And then I'm literally in there like going, I wonder if I could run the table until they kick me out of the pool. You start thinking
you're such
like
an addict that's not an addict. Like you would have been a really good addict. I'm telling you right now.
Oh, I think I am. We all. I feel like everybody in life is on a continuum of something, and on the addict continuum, I'm certainly in the danger zone. Because but I think a lot of triathletes kind of think that way.
No,
it's
I
like,
agree.
I'm gonna go ride today. I got a 2-hour ride, but man, my coach would probably be blown away if I did 5. You know what I mean?
No, he wouldn't. He'd be like, what the hell are you doing today?
I actually don't mind that once in a while if they let air it out on the bike, but I don't like the run. Coach, I just had to run 20 miles.
My legs just wanted to run today, coach. I did 30. I'm like, oh well, take the next 2 weeks off and enjoy how your legs feel. See, people say we're always soft, but we threw some pretty good harsh one-liners in there. A little bit pulpity, I'm sure, but hey, you know what? It's good for every once in a while. You gotta jab people into place if you feel like it. Hopefully that's.
I know. I kind of wish we were a little more explicit on our podcast. To be honest,
you've been Mr. Softy the last 2 or 3 weeks. So
I know, but
glad to see you got flip flops on finally. My God,
I might start throwing a few more.
That's when I know we could kind of go today. Is because you had the flip flops on. You weren't wearing your Hokas. I was like, oh, he's game. Like that's like your. It's like it's like the international sign for I'm game is wearing your flip flops. So now they're all queued up. We hope you.
Isn't that weird, dude?
What's
there's something to be said for that. When you come in wearing your Hokas and you're in your khakis, you're just
I can't take you seriously.
You're a little bit more like in line. You know what I mean? In life.
We had somebody come in and complain about it earlier this week. We had one of our athletes came in that was in town, Keith Bates. We love you, Keith, but he's he actually does work in the pulpit. And he came in, he was like, I'm telling you guys, he came up and dropped off some coffee for us. He was like, I'm telling you, you keep giving people crap about khakis and Hokas, I'm going to come in here. I was like, hey, you're a man of the cloth. I get it. You got to do what you got to do. It's part of the part of the deal. But yeah, it's just, you can kind of catch a vibe, Same thing goes for sweaters and, turtlenecks. I'm just saying there's a vibe there. It's not my vibe.
I was going to go into some religious stuff there, but I'm not going to.
No, we like we've already kind of tipped the scale on this podcast. And we probably already lost a few. Right. We probably got a couple of 1-stars coming.
Yeah.
As always, we love you. We appreciate you. If you're racing this weekend, because we have a ton of athletes racing all over St. George, Busselton, I think that's how you say it. Half marathons, Olympics, sprints, everything and anything. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. Let it all hang out. Run free. Be happy. Be healthy. Hop on over to the website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for pretty much everything. Coaching, camps, community, hub experiences, the condo, you name it, it is there. Our club membership is ongoing. It's kind of regaining momentum in terms of popularity with races now pretty much going full on everywhere. We'll lay out the rest of your season, which could be problematic for some of you since you have a ton of races built up. We'll take care of that for you. Mike's in charge of that. Click on the coaching tab, scroll down 3. That's the club membership. If you have more interest in just coaching in general, you can click on the staff. We have myself and Mike, obviously. Then you got Nicole Winger, Phil Jones, Jessica Jacobs. Click on that, learn more about them. Same coffee bean, different pot of coffee. Most all of our June camps are sold out. We do have a new Ironman Chattanooga training camp that we have on the website as well. That's already halfway full. That we just started this week. Great for Ironman Chattanooga. Also great if you're just want to do recon and check it out for next year. Next year's 70.3 or full, or honestly just a great camp if you have like a late season 70.3. If you have some people already signed up that are just doing, I think like in September, October 70.3. A great training weekend. Get around some people. Do something fun. Especially if you weren't able to get into races, and you're kind of stuck. Like, get out and do something. Be around people, socialize, have some fun, get out there, gain some fitness. If you have any questions about the camps or hub experiences or the condo that we have, you can always email c26operations@gmail.com. If you have any questions for Mike specifically, he is at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have anything for me today, or you want to slap my hand for dropping the F-bomb, I am at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, Coach.
Close it down.
All right, I'll see you in a bit.